Trump administration has also announced new tariffs that could raise the price of tomatoes at the grocery store.
Has torched a 30-year-old trade agreement that slapped a 17% tariff on fresh tomatoes from Mexico.
At sunrise, food supply chains are supposed to move quietly. Trucks roll forward. Paperwork clears. Produce changes hands without anyone noticing. That silence is the sign of a system working. But when silence turns into stillness, when engines stop and gates stay closed, something deeper has gone wrong. Along the northern border, shipments of American tomatoes are no longer moving the way they used to. Crates meant for grocery shelves sit idle. Contracts once assumed to be permanent are suddenly questioned. And for farmers who planned their entire season around a single destination, the ground has shifted beneath their feet. This story is not about tomatoes. It is about how modern economies rely on invisible agreements, how trust becomes infrastructure, and how power can change hands without a single public confrontation. For decades, American tomato exports rested on a quiet assumption: Canada would always be there. Not because of loyalty, not because of politics, but because the system worked. Climate differences, seasonal gaps, transportation efficiency, and integrated logistics made the trade feel automatic. Fields in California and the southern United States planted with confidence, knowing that demand across the border was already accounted for. That confidence shaped everything: planting decisions, financing, labor contracts. Entire rural economies aligned themselves around the idea that Canadian buyers were a constant, not negotiated each year, not defended, simply expected. This is how invisible supply chains form, not through announcements, but through repetition. When something works long enough, it stops being questioned. Then the rules changed. Canada's decision to block American tomato imports arrived quietly, wrapped in regulatory language. Official statements cited quality concerns and standards. On paper, it looked procedural. But systems don't react to paperwork. They react to consequences. Within days, shipments were stopped. Border crossings slowed. Export volumes dropped. What had once been routine suddenly became uncertain, and uncertainty is the one thing supply chains are not designed to handle. American tomato exports to Canada had been worth hundreds of millions of dollars annually. That revenue didn't just support farmers. It supported truck drivers, packing facilities, fertilizer suppliers, equipment repair shops, and entire towns built around agriculture. When exports collapsed, the damage didn't stay at the border. It traveled inward. Farmers found themselves with produce ready for markets that no longer existed. Financing built on guaranteed buyers began to crack. Storage costs rose. Prices fell. Some growers tried redirecting supply domestically, only to discover that the U.S. market was already saturated. Tomatoes move quickly, or they lose value. There is no pause button. This is where the hidden structure of food systems becomes visible. Agriculture doesn't operate on flexibility. It operates on planning. Fields cannot be replanted overnight. Harvests cannot be delayed without loss. When a market disappears mid-cycle, the losses compound. But while American producers struggled to adapt, another system was already moving. Mexico did not wait. Where the US and Canada once shared a tightly integrated tomato supply chain, Mexico had spent years building capacity quietly. Greenhouses expanded, logistics improved, labor networks stabilized. When Canada reduced its reliance on American tomatoes, Mexico was ready to fill the gap. This shift wasn't accidental. It wasn't sudden. It was strategic. Investment flowed quickly. Advanced greenhouse operations scaled production year-round. Water-efficient systems reduced costs. Automation lowered labor exposure. Supply contracts were signed not just with Canada, but with global buyers looking for stability. The result was a rapid reordering of trade flows. As American exports declined, Mexican exports surged. What had once been a regional adjustment turned into a multi-billion-dollar opportunity. Estimates place Mexico's gain from this shift at over $12 billion. Not from a single deal, but from becoming the dependable alternative in an unstable market. This is how power moves in modern trade. Not through confrontation, but through reliability. Canada didn't need to publicly challenge the United States. It simply reduced risk. And when trust wavers, capital and contracts follow certainty elsewhere. For American farming communities, the impact is not theoretical. It is immediate. Packing plants reduce shifts. Seasonal workers are let go early. Trucking routes disappear. Local tax bases shrink. Schools feel the pressure. Clinics delay expansions. Towns built around agriculture begin to hollow out. These effects don't appear in trade statistics. They appear in everyday decisions. Families leaving, businesses closing, younger generations choosing not to return.
The system that once supported them was never designed to handle sudden isolation.
What makes this collapse harder to reverse is that agriculture is not just about land. It is about networks. Once buyers adjust, once logistics reroute, once investment moves, rebuilding trust takes far longer than losing it. Mexico's advantage is not only cost, it is momentum. New infrastructure attracts more investment. More investment improves efficiency. Improved efficiency locks in contracts. Over time, what began as a temporary substitution becomes a permanent restructuring. Meanwhile, American producers face structural limits. Expanding domestic markets requires demand that does not exist. Competing internationally requires pricing and reliability that are difficult to restore once buyers move on. Technology adoption takes time. Regulatory adjustments take longer. This is the quiet danger of trade disruption. It doesn't announce itself as a crisis. It unfolds as a series of reasonable decisions, each one logical in isolation, collectively irreversible. No headlines declare the end of a supply chain. It simply fades from relevance. Canada's move illustrates a broader shift in global trade behavior. Nations increasingly treat food not just as a commodity, but as a strategic asset. Reliability matters more than price. Stability outweighs proximity. Political unpredictability becomes a cost. Mexico understood this moment. It positioned itself as the stable node in a fragmented system. And once that perception forms, it becomes self-reinforcing. The deeper lesson here is not about tomatoes or tariffs or even borders. It is about how economies built on assumption are vulnerable to silence. For years, American agriculture operated under the belief that certain markets were permanent, that integration meant security, that long-standing relationships would outlast policy changes. But modern supply chains do not reward history. They reward consistency.